Everyone laughed when she pulled out crumpled bills from her pocket. Not polite laughter, the kind that cuts. The kind that says you don't belong here. Miranda Garcia stood there in worn nursing scrubs, her shoulders squared but her hands trembling on the inside. She had saved for 3 long months, working double shifts at St. Mary's Memorial just to afford the entry fee at Sterling Arms, the most exclusive shooting range in the city. To her, this wasn't just a place to fire rounds at paper. It was a test. A quiet, personal way of proving to herself that her past wasn't gone, that her skills hadn't vanished. But to them, she was a joke. Richard Sterling the owner, strutted behind the marble counter in spotless tactical gear. Not a wrinkle, not a stain, not a single sign that he'd ever actually seen combat. On his hip hung a gold-plated pistol, a showpiece, not a weapon. His smile was thin, sharp, cruel. "Can I help you?" His voice dripped condescension. Miranda answered simply, "I'd like to use the range." The laugh that came out of him echoed off the glass walls. "This is Sterling Arms Elite," he sneered. "We're a private facility for serious marksmen, not—" He waved a hand at her scrubs, at her tired face, at her scuffed boots. "Not for hobbyists playing dress-up." The room shifted. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. A senator in a tailored suit sipped espresso, pretending not to listen but hanging on every word. Men in fresh tactical polos with spotless boots smirked. A woman in designer workout gear snapped selfies with a pink rifle, then glanced at Miranda and whispered something that drew more laughter. Miranda didn't flinch. She placed the money on the counter, bills worn soft from being counted and recounted, money scraped together from skipped meals and sleepless nights. "I can pay," she said, voice steady. Sterling pushed the cash back with manicured fingers. "It's not about the money, sweetheart. Some people belong here, and some—" He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear the venom, "don't." Behind him, Viktor Petrov, a hulking man in a SWAT jacket, chuckled. "Maybe she needs directions to the bingo hall," he said loudly, earning another wave of laughter. Miranda's jaw tightened. Old instincts flickered awake inside her, instincts she had buried years ago. She met Sterling's eyes, unshaken. "I served my country," she said. "I have every right to be here." But that only fueled him. "Army cook, supply clerk," he mocked. His voice rose, playing to the crowd now. "This place is for elite operators, not nurses playing soldier on their day off." The words cut, but not the way he intended. Because Miranda knew something no one else in that marble room understood. Sometimes the quietest person carries the heaviest past. Sterling leaned back with his hands on his vest, puffed up with pride. "Tell you what," he said smugly, "there's a nice little place across town, Pistol Pets. They even have ladies' night on Wednesdays." The laughter roared again, cruel and dismissive. And in that moment, Miranda knew every face in that room. The senator, the polo shirt warriors, the designer-clad hobbyists. Not one of them had ever known what it meant to have 12 lives balanced on a single heartbeat. She picked up her scattered bills as Sterling called for security, his voice booming. "Escort this woman off the premises." And as she stepped into the parking lot, gravel crunching under her boots, their laughter followed her. A chorus of arrogance, a wall of mockery. They had no idea who she really was. No idea what she was capable of. No idea that the woman they shoved out the door once carried a name whispered in combat zones. Ghost Eye. The soldier who never missed. And though they didn't know it yet, they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Not from fear, not from shame, but from rage, the quiet kind, the dangerous kind. The drive home blurred past her. The laughter from Sterling Arms still echoed in her head. That smug smile, that chorus of jeers. They weren't laughing at just her, they were laughing at everyone like her. Nurses who pulled double shifts for scraps, veterans who wore scars the world couldn't see, ordinary people who didn't fit Sterling's definition of elite. Her 10-year-old Honda rattled into the parking lot of her building, paint faded, the bumper scarred. She killed the engine, sat in silence, and let her breathing slow. She wouldn't cry, not for them. Her apartment was small, clean, quiet. The kind of place that didn't invite visitors. The door stuck as always. She gave it a practiced shoulder bump to force it open. Inside, the fridge hummed, nearly empty leftover takeout, milk about to expire, energy drinks stacked in the corner. Her couch sagged under her weight as she sat down, her body aching from 12-hour shifts. On the wall hung a single photograph. Miranda in her nursing cap, smiling beside her mother, who wore a scarf over her bald head. Chemotherapy had stolen her hair, but not her spirit. That smile had carried Miranda through war zones, through hospital corridors, through every sleepless night. She stared at it now, a pang running deep. Her mother had believed in her, always. Her phone buzzed. She swiped through her gallery, old, dusty pictures she hadn't looked at in years. Baghdad, dust-covered Humvees, soldiers grinning, holding rifles. And there she was, younger, harder, in full combat gear. The Barrett sniper rifle taller than her. A Sharpie nickname scrawled across her helmet, Ghost Eye. It had started as a joke, but stuck after they realized the truth. She didn't miss, not when it mattered, not when lives hung in the balance. That night her dreams dragged her back. The rooftop, the unbearable desert heat, the sight of a truck bomb rolling toward her pinned squad. She could feel the sweat on her hands, the weight of the rifle pressed into her shoulder. She squeezed the trigger, but in the dream, the rifle jammed. She watched helplessly as the explosion bloomed like a deadly flower. She jolted awake, drenched in sweat. 3 a.m, the hour when ghosts come calling. Miranda made tea and sat by the window, staring out at the sleeping city. Somewhere, Richard Sterling probably snored peacefully in his mansion, wrapped in silk sheets. The thought made her tea taste bitter. By sunrise, it was back to work. St. Mary's Memorial, the opposite of Sterling Arms. No marble floors, no espresso machines, no polished luxury cars in the lot, just overworked nurses, exhausted doctors, and patients from the city's hardest neighborhoods. Miranda thrived in it. The chaos, the urgency, the relentless tide of human suffering. Gunshot wounds, overdoses, children with fevers, elderly with broken bones. Here, no one cared about your scrubs or your shoes. They cared about your hands, your judgment, your ability to keep calm when death was standing in the doorway. Still, the humiliation gnawed at her. Not for herself, but for everyone else who would walk through Sterling's glass doors and be told they didn't belong. Every veteran who couldn't afford the fee. Every hourly worker sneered at for daring to dream. At lunch, sitting with Sarah and Maria, her fellow nurses, Miranda finally told them. The story spilled out, clipped and restrained, but enough. Enough for Sarah's jaw to clench, for Maria's eyes to flash. "You're the steadiest person I've ever seen," Sarah snapped. "Remember that patient who went psychotic last month? You talked him down while security panicked." Maria nodded. "Or when that gang shooting came in, 6 patients in 3 minutes, you never even blinked." Their anger touched her more than she wanted to admit. She tried to wave it off, but Sarah's voice cut through. "Someone should expose them. That's discrimination." Miranda shook her head. "Let it go. Men like Sterling, they get what's coming eventually." She didn't know how prophetic those words were. That evening, as her shift wound down, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications stacked one after another. Texts, missed calls, social media alerts. Confused, she unlocked the screen and froze. Her humiliation had been caught on Sterling's security cameras. The footage was online. Viral. Millions were watching her being mocked, dismissed, pushed toward the door. The captions were brutal but powerful. "Veteran nurse humiliated for being too poor." "Elite gun range destroys healthcare worker." "Is this how we treat those who serve?" And then, buried among the flood of comments, one message made her blood run cold. "That stance, I'd recognize it anywhere. Ghost Eye, is that you?" The past wasn't just knocking. It was kicking down the door. Everyone in the hospital cafeteria was talking about it. Not about patients, not about weekend plans. About her. By the time Miranda clocked out, the video had exploded. 200,000 views, then 500,000. By the time she walked into the parking garage, the count was climbing past 1,000,000. Nurses, orderlies, even doctors whispered as she passed, glancing at their phones, then back at her. She wanted to shrink into her scrubs and vanish, but fate had other plans. You always did hate bullies, Garcia. The voice froze her mid-step. She turned, heart pounding. By the elevator stood Marcus Wheeler, her old spotter, the only man who had been there for every impossible shot. He hadn't changed much, not really. His hair was grayer, his build a little heavier, but he still stood like a soldier, alert, balanced, ready. His smile was the same crooked grin she remembered from the desert. Marcus, her voice cracked, a flood of memories surging. Been a while, he said, stepping closer. 12 years, 3 months, and, he glanced at his watch, 14 days, but who's counting? Miranda didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How did you find me? He shrugged. Wasn't hard. I kept tabs on you. Figured you wanted your peace, so I stayed away. But when I saw that video, his jaw tightened. Nobody treats one of mine like that. She shook her head. I'm not one of yours anymore, Marcus. I'm just a nurse. He snorted. Just a nurse. The steadiest hands I've ever seen. The calmest nerves. The woman who made a shot in Baghdad physics says shouldn't even be possible. That's not just anything. She started walking toward her car, hoping he'd let it go. But of course, Marcus never let things go. He fell in step beside her. What do you want? She asked, exhaustion leaking into her voice. He pulled out his phone and held it up. Sterling's face filled the screen, smug, polished, dressed in even flashier tactical gear. A promo video blared, the Elite Marksman Challenge, $100,000, Sterling's private SWAT team against all challengers. Marcus's voice hardened. Instead of apologizing, he's doubling down, using your humiliation as free publicity. He's selling himself as the gold standard. And the worst part? People are buying it. Miranda looked away. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Marcus stepped in front of her, forcing her to stop. His eyes burned with conviction. You don't get it, Garcia. You left the field, but your legend didn't leave with you. There are female snipers in every branch now because of you. Ghost Eye is more than a nickname. You're a symbol, and this pompous fraud is spitting on everything you represent. She swallowed hard. I'm not that person anymore. Marcus leaned in closer, lowering his voice. Yes, you are. I saw it in that video. You stood your ground, didn't flinch, didn't give him the satisfaction. That wasn't a nurse, Miranda. That was Ghost Eye, and the world saw it too. Her car sat waiting her escape. She gripped the door handle but didn't open it. Marcus's words echoed inside her, stirring something she had fought to bury for years. The discipline, the fire, the certainty that when others faltered, she would not. He placed a hand on the roof of her car. I'm organizing a response, a team. We're not letting Sterling rewrite the meaning of excellence. We need Ghost Eye. The air between them thickened. Miranda's chest tightened as memories flooded back, the rooftop, the impossible shot, the lives she'd saved. She had sworn never to return to that world, never again. But the universe wasn't giving her a choice, not this time. Because one arrogant man had just declared war on her legacy. And war was something Miranda Garcia had never lost. She sat alone in her apartment that night, the silence pressing heavy against the walls. On the table sat a cardboard box. Dusty, untouched for years. Inside it lay the life she had locked away. Her hands hovered over the lid, trembling. She didn't want to remember. Didn't want to see the medals, the photographs, the reminders of who she used to be. But Marcus's words echoed in her head. We need Ghost Eye. With a slow breath, she opened it. There they were, her ribbons, her marksmanship certificates, her battered dog tags, and a photo, Delta Company. 12 faces frozen in time, younger than they had any right to be. 12 soldiers whose lives had depended on her in Baghdad. Her eyes burned as the memory surged. That day, that rooftop, that truck bomb. The order had been impossible. Stop a suicide driver half a mile out, heat waves blurring everything. She had one shot, one chance, 12 lives hanging in the balance, and she'd made it. One bullet, one miracle. That was the day Ghost Eye stopped being a nickname. It became a legend. Her phone buzzed, jolting her back. Sarah again sending screenshots of Sterling's latest posts. His followers filled the comments with bile, wannabe warrior, glorified nurse, participation trophy culture. Miranda's jaw clenched. Something inside her snapped. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about everyone who had been told they don't belong. She grabbed her phone and dialed Marcus. Her voice was steady, cold, decisive. "Tell me more about this competition." The next morning, she stood before her hospital supervisor. "I need a month off," she said. Her boss blinked over her glasses. "Miranda, you haven't taken a single vacation in 3 years. Is everything okay?" Miranda hesitated, then nodded. "Everything's fine. I just need to take care of something." Word spread faster than wildfire. Through veteran networks, through whispers and social media posts. Ghost Eye was coming out of retirement. Old comrades reached out, offering rifles, ranges, sponsors, anything to help. But Miranda refused. This wasn't about equipment. It wasn't about spectacle. She would face Sterling on her own terms. That night she drove to a small public range on the edge of town. Rusted fencing. Gravel lot. The kind of place where real shooters practiced quietly without luxury or applause. Tommy, the Vietnam vet who owned it, recognized her the moment she stepped onto the line. He didn't say her name, not out loud. He just handed her a rifle. "You remind me of someone I knew in the war," he said, his eyes narrowed with respect. "Quiet ones, they're always the most dangerous." Miranda didn't answer. She just took position, breathed, and let her finger rest on the trigger. The first shot cracked through the air, clean, center, like she had never stopped. Shot after shot followed, her muscle memory returning like an old friend. Breath control, wind reading, trigger squeeze, no computer scopes, no gadgets, just discipline, just her. When the rifle clicked empty, she lowered it. Tommy whistled low. "Guess some things don't fade." Miranda didn't smile. She didn't feel pride. What she felt was clarity. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about something larger. Excellence without arrogance, skill without showmanship, sacrifice without applause. And if Richard Sterling wanted to test what real elite looked like, she would give him his answer. She left the range that night with the weight of the box still in her chest. The weight of every sneer, every dismissal, every arrogant laugh. And a single, unshakable thought burned in her mind. When the time came, she wouldn't just win. She would remind the world why they once called her Ghost Eye. The morning of registration came too soon. Sterling Arms looked different now, banners draped across its marble entrance, news vans lined up along the road, food trucks and bleachers set up as if it were a carnival. This wasn't just a competition. Sterling had turned it into a media spectacle. Miranda pulled up in her battered Honda Civic, parking between a fleet of black SUVs and sports cars worth more than her entire apartment building. Heads turned as she stepped out. Plain clothes, hair pulled back, no sponsor logos, no flashy gear. Just a woman with a borrowed rifle case and a steady walk. Inside, registration was chaos. Cameras flashed. Competitors strutted in tactical uniforms stitched with patches, some wearing sunglasses indoors, others boasting about the price of their rifles. To them, this wasn't about marksmanship. It was theater. The woman at the registration desk barely looked up. "Name." "Garcia," Miranda said quietly. "Competitor 47. The number had been her old unit designation. The clerk handed her a badge with a bored smile. "Good luck. You'll need it against Sterling's team." Miranda slipped it over her neck and walked past the crowd. She didn't correct the woman. She didn't need to. The preliminary rounds began. Dozens of competitors lined up, each eager to prove themselves under the bright lights. Basic marksmanship tests, standard distances, targets most seasoned shooters could hit without breaking a sweat. Sterling's team, Victor Petrov and 3 others, strutted onto the line like celebrities. Victor winked at the cameras before firing, dropping rounds in quick succession with practiced flair. The crowd roared. Reporters scribbled. Sterling himself hovered near the announcers, bragging about the elite professionals representing his range. Miranda watched quietly from the sidelines. When her turn came, she stepped forward without a word. The range officer raised an eyebrow at her borrowed rifle, scratched stock, and worn sling. She didn't care. She raised the weapon, breathed in, and deliberately missed the bullseye by inches. Then again and again. Her shots were clean but not perfect, enough to pass, enough to blend in. Whispers rippled through the crowd. She's mediocre. Who let her in? Probably here for the experience. Miranda ignored them all. She wasn't here to dazzle early. She was here for one moment, the only moment that mattered. By afternoon, the herd had thinned. 50 competitors cut down to 12. Sterling's four-man team, of course, stood tall with grins and handshakes, drinking in the applause. Alongside them were police sharpshooters, sponsored competition pros with cutting-edge gear, and two unknowns. Miranda was one of them. Sterling barely noticed her. He strolled past with a microphone, bragging about his facility, shaking hands with VIPs. Cameras followed his every move. To him, Miranda was background noise, a shadow among stars. That night in her modest hotel room, Miranda laid out her rifle on the bed. She cleaned it slowly, methodically, each piece a ritual of calm. On the nightstand sat the photo of her old unit, their faces smiling out from a different lifetime. This wasn't about the money, not about revenge. It was about proving something larger. That true skill doesn't come from equipment. That excellence isn't for sale. That the loudest voices are often the weakest hands. The final event loomed. Sterling promised it would separate professionals from pretenders. 10 moving targets, unpredictable wind machines, 10 rounds. Miranda closed her eyes and breathed. She could feel the weight of the city, the weight of every person who had been laughed at, dismissed, overlooked. They were with her now. Every shot she would take belonged to them. Outside, the carnival lights of Sterling Arms blazed through the night. The world was waiting for spectacle, waiting for flashy shots, waiting for a champion in designer tactical gear. But the world had no idea what was coming. Because Ghost Eye was back. And she had saved her best shot for last. The sun rose hot and merciless over Sterling Arms the next morning. The carnival had doubled overnight. News vans parked shoulder to shoulder, bleachers filled with spectators waving signs, influencers live-streaming from every corner of the grounds. Sterling strutted through it all like a king on his stage. Today, he boomed into a microphone, his gold-plated pistol gleaming at his side. We separate the professionals from the pretenders. The crowd cheered, cameras zoomed in, reporters scribbled feverishly. Miranda stood off to the side, silent. No sponsor banners, no entourage. Just her, a borrowed rifle, and the steady calm that had once steadied entire platoons under fire. The rules were announced with fanfare. 10 targets spaced from 100 to 1,000 yards. Each would move unpredictably, activated in random sequence. Competitors had 10 rounds, one per target, and to make it authentic, massive wind machines would whip across the range at random intervals. Sterling's grin widened. This is what separates real operators from weekend warriors. The first shooters were law enforcement officers, solid professional. They hit 5, maybe 6 targets. The crowd applauded politely. Then came the competition pros. Sleek rifles, high-tech scopes, wind meters clipped to their vests. They pushed higher, 7, sometimes 8. The audience buzzed with admiration. Finally, Sterling's team. One by one, they swaggered forward. Their shots were precise, calculated, 8 hits, another 8. Cameras flashed. Sterling clapped each on the back like proud sons. Then Victor Petrov. No tricks now, no smirk. He lay prone, eyes narrowed, listening to his spotter's wind calls. Shot after shot rang out. 8 hits. Then 9. On the 10th, the wind machines roared. The bullets sailed wide. 9 of 10. The crowd erupted in cheers. Sterling seized the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what excellence looks like. 9 out of 10 under battlefield conditions. I doubt anyone will match it today. Miranda's name was called. Competitor 47. The crowd shifted, murmurs spread, phones lifted. The woman from the viral video, the nurse, the one Sterling had humiliated. She walked to the firing line with slow, steady steps. No entourage, no fanfare, just silence that seemed to thicken as she took her place. Sterling smirked. Stage fright, perhaps, he said for the cameras, his voice dripping mockery. Miranda didn't answer. She lay prone, settling into the dirt like it was an old friend. She let the rifle rest against her shoulder, but she didn't fire. She waited. The first target appeared, moving left to right. She tracked it and held her fire. The second target lit up. Then the third, she still didn't fire. The crowd grew restless, whispers rippled. What is she doing? Is she freezing? Does she even know how this works? Sterling chuckled into his mic. The pressure can be overwhelming for some. Not everyone is cut out for elite conditions. But Miranda wasn't frozen. She was calculating, watching, memorizing the rhythm of the targets, the arc of their paths, the gust patterns from the wind machines. And then, deliberately, she ejected 9 of her 10 rounds, one by one, metallic clinks echoing across the silent range as they hit the ground. Gasps tore through the bleachers. Even Viktor Petrov turned, eyes widening. 1 round remained in her chamber, 1 chance. She settled into position again, heartbeat steady, breath measured. For exactly 2.7 seconds in the cycle, all 10 targets would align in a diagonal line. A shot that existed only in theory, dismissed as impossible. But Ghost Eye didn't live in theory. She lived in the space where the impossible became real. Her finger tightened on the trigger, and the world held its breath. The world seemed to stop moving. No sound, no breeze, no thought. Just Miranda. 1 rifled. 1 round. 10 targets waiting in the chaos of shifting wind. She inhaled slowly, held the breath, and squeezed. The crack of the shot cut through the silence. The bullet screamed into motion, carving a path no one thought possible. First target impact, paper tore. But the bullet didn't stop. The angle carried it forward into the second, then the third. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The bullet danced, ricocheting with perfect precision, defying wind, defying math, threading through the impossible. 4th target, 5th, 6th. The bleachers rose to their feet. Some screamed, some covered their mouths, others simply stood frozen, not believing their eyes. 7th, 8th, 9th. Sterling's smug smile cracked, draining color from his face. His microphone slipped in his hand. Then the 10th target, a sharp rip as the round tore through, leaving silence in its wake. The loudspeaker crackled. All targets hit, 1 shot, 10 hits. For a moment, no one moved. The silence was deafening. Then the place erupted. Spectators roared. Veterans in the crowd stood on their chairs, fists pumping the air. Reporters screamed into cameras. Social media streams exploded in real time. Ghost Eye, Ghost Eye, the chant rolled like thunder. Miranda rose calmly, brushing dust from her hands. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at the cameras. She looked at Richard Sterling. My name is Miranda Garcia, she said, her voice steady, carrying across the range without the need for a mic. 15 years ago in Baghdad, they called me Ghost Eye. A month ago, I tried to pay for range time here, and Mr. Sterling told me I didn't belong, that this place was for elite operators, not nurses playing dress-up. Gasps, phones lifted higher, every lens zoomed in. Well, Mr. Sterling, she continued, eyes locked on him, real operators don't need gold-plated pistols or marble floors to prove their worth. They don't need to humiliate others to feel important. And they don't forget that skill is born from sacrifice, from discipline, from service, not from the size of your bank account. The crowd roared louder. Reporters surged forward. The chant grew deafening, Ghost Eye, Ghost Eye. Sterling stumbled forward, fumbling for his microphone. And now wait just a minute. There are procedures, rules, this shot doesn't. But no one was listening anymore. The tide had turned. Veterans cheered her name. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders. Even Viktor Petrov, the man who had mocked her days before, stood silent, his expression one of stunned respect. Miranda bent, picked up her single-spent casing, and slipped it into her pocket. Her movements were unhurried, calm, as though she hadn't just rewritten the rules of physics. A judge, trembling, stepped forward. The results are clear. Competitor 47, Miranda Garcia, wins the Elite Marksman Challenge. The roar was deafening. Sterling staggered back, face pale, sweat beading on his forehead as the cameras turned away from him and toward her. His carefully built image crumbled in seconds. Miranda raised her chin. "The $100,000 prize," she said firmly, "will be donated to St. Mary's Memorial Hospital's pediatric wing, because unlike some people, I believe in giving back to the community that supports us." The applause turned into something else now: respect, admiration, gratitude. But she wasn't finished. She looked back at Sterling one last time, her words a dagger. "I also have a challenge for you, Richard. Open your doors to everyone: veterans, nurses, teachers, people who serve. Do that and I'll consider this matter closed. Refuse, and I'll use this prize money to open a competing range right across the street." The threat landed like a bomb. Investors in the VIP section leapt to their feet, whispering furiously into their phones. Sterling's empire, built on arrogance, was collapsing live on camera. And all it had taken was one shot. By the end of the week, Richard Sterling's empire was crumbling. Investors buylaid. Memberships were canceled. News anchors replayed Miranda's shot on loop, dissecting every frame, calling it the impossible round. The board of directors didn't waste time. Sterling was summoned into a cold, sterile conference room where cameras weren't allowed. His pleas about profit margins, his speeches about exclusivity, fell on deaf ears. "Your arrogance humiliated a national hero," one board member snapped. "You've exposed us to lawsuits, alienated half our customer base, and turned this brand toxic. You're finished." Security escorted him out of his own building. The same marble floors where he once strutted now echoed with his footsteps of defeat. His gold-plated pistol was replaced with a clipboard months later at a used car lot in Austin, where a sagging sign read, "Honest Rick's previously owned vehicles." The man who sneered at ordinary people now begged them to finance minivans. But while Sterling's name rotted, something else bloomed. The range was reborn under new leadership: Colonel Patricia Martinez, a decorated veteran with no patience for arrogance. Her first act was simple. She tore down the members' only sign with her own hands. "This range is for everyone who respects firearms and each other," she declared. And just like that, Sterling Arms became Liberty Range. The marble lobby was stripped down. In its place, simple wood and steel. The espresso bar replaced with a wall honoring veterans, teachers, nurses, first responders. Discounts were offered, scholarships created. Kids from rough neighborhoods found a place to learn discipline and respect. And at the heart of it all was Miranda. Twice a week after 12-hour hospital shifts, she came to the range to teach. Her classes filled instantly, wait lists stretching months. She didn't just teach shooting. She taught calm, focus, respect. She taught that the most important weapon wasn't in your hands, it was in your heart. Viktor Petrov, the same man who once mocked her as a nurse playing soldier, became one of her most dedicated students. He humbled himself, learned quietly, and eventually stood beside her as an instructor, passing on lessons of humility to the next generation. A year later, on the anniversary of her impossible shot, Liberty Range hosted its first community day. No velvet ropes, no VIP lounges, just families picnicking on the grass, veterans sharing stories, police demonstrating safety drills, kids taking their first shots under patient guidance. The highlight was the unveiling of a simple plaque near the entrance. Bronze letters gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Excellence has no dress code, in honor of Ghost Eye." Miranda stood there, surrounded by children tugging at their parents' sleeves, veterans saluting her, nurses hugging her, and reporters snapping pictures. But she didn't smile for the cameras. She smiled when she saw a young girl, barely 12, adjusting her stance on the line, determination blazing in her eyes. Because that was the future, not marble floors, not luxury rifles, not exclusion. Heart, discipline, courage. 2 years later, Sterling was forgotten, but Miranda's shot lived on. Physics professors studied it. Documentaries recreated it. High school teachers used it to explain trajectories. Millions watched it online, still stunned at what one woman did with one bullet. But Miranda didn't care about the numbers. She cared about the letter taped inside her locker at the hospital. It was from a young soldier in Afghanistan who had been told she didn't belong. She had written, I watched your story. They call me the top marksman in my battalion now. Because of you, I never gave up. That letter mattered more than any trophy, more than any record. Because it proved that the real legacy of Ghost Eye wasn't the impossible shot. It was the courage she gave others to take theirs. So when reporters asked Miranda if she regretted anything, she only said this: "My only regret is that it took me so long to realize being underestimated is a gift. It gives you the element of surprise. It lets you show the world that strength doesn't always look the way they expect." And to everyone watching, the narrator's voice lingered like a challenge. We all have a Sterling in our lives. Someone who tries to make us feel small. But like Miranda proved, their laughter means nothing. Because excellence doesn't come from wealth, or arrogance, or marble floors. It comes from sacrifice, from discipline, from heart. So when your impossible shot appears, whatever it looks like, take it. Because the world is waiting to see what you'll do next. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.